In 2019, I covered a lot of mods. Arguably some of the best mods I've ever covered for Fallout 4, as things really went up a step. The bar was really raised that year. So even though I've already shown you the top mods of 2019, actually twice, at one point halfway through the year and then a final video in 2020, in this video, what I wanted to do was actually show you what I thought were some underrated mods, hidden gems, if you will, from the year. Now, some of these are truly quite hidden, you probably never heard of them. Other ones maybe you saw in passing, but didn't pay too much attention to. Now I wanted to showcase some of them again, as just some cool mods that I think will impact your Fallout 4. Several of these are smaller, but still make very good changes to Fallout 4. And if you guys do enjoy the content, you can leave a like or subscribe. I should have a lot more mod content coming, and frankly, there's already been a ton of mod content. But with that being said, let's first look at Rsiyo's Location Pack. Coming out in April of 2019, what this did was actually add in 8 immensely lore-friendly and just really cool new locations to Fallout 4. It's one of those things that you might not even realize a mod added this in, but what this has the overall effect of doing is adds a little bit more intrigue to some of the more desolate areas of the Commonwealth. Walking down this barren road one too many times, now you'll actually find something there. It might just be as simple as a few enemies, a new prop piece, or even just some items, but I definitely think it's a good addition to the game, and for me, quickly became a must download. A few location mods like this, and you'll quickly have a much more lively Commonwealth. But then just a follow-up one that I think deserves way more attention, and came out right at the end of 2019, is Wasteland Ballistics. There are quite a few different gameplay overhauls when it comes to combat for Fallout 4. Some of these being quite comprehensive, better locational damage being one of the most famous, but the problem with almost every single one of those from Horizon to better locational damage is they only affect vanilla weapons, or modded weapons when a patch is applied to them. And considering weapon mods are one of the most prominent categories of Fallout 4 modding, this does become somewhat of an issue. Wasteland Ballistics is similar to those other overhaul mods, adding in new features to different caliber types and new effects from being shot, but it does it on a per ammo and per projectile basis, meaning for the vast majority of weapon mods, it'll just work right out of the box. Now for some of these, if it makes custom ammo types or actually changes the projectiles, it will not work, but this still has way more out of the box compatibility than any other combat overhaul currently available. And that alone, I think, means you should be paying attention to it. Now in game, this will do a few different things. Bullets now have a certain trajectory and actually a drop off after a certain point, depending on the caliber type. Certain bullets are more piercing, while other ones are better against just fleshy targets. Some ammo types are actually really good at breaking bones, but don't necessarily do as much damage as they did previously. And it also adds in a bleed mechanic, which is going to be a huge impact on gameplay. Some ammo types cause more bleeding, so you rely more on that damage over time, but this also impacts you, although can be curtailed with a stim pack. Overall, it's a really cool one that you could either read deeply into, find out all the changes it brings to various ammo types, or just kind of install and you'll pretty quickly figure it out. But again, I really love this one because it has that widespread support that so many others lack. But now we have one that wasn't totally under the radar, but I think is actually a really special mod, and that is Random Encounter Manager. What this will do is make it so you can actually tune random encounters in Fallout 4. These happen naturally, but now you'll actually have control over them. How often they happen, how tough the enemies that spawn are, how many enemies spawn, but across an entire playthrough, especially on survival mode, or even if you're just like walking around and not only relying on fast travel, is make it so the Commonwealth can become significantly more chaotic, but also just how chaotic you want it. In a very natural feeling way, because it's literally using the vanilla random encounter system, you could have more enemies pop up and spawn around you. If you want it to be outright chaos, you could have tons of spawns all over, or you could turn it down, just making it a bit more aggressive than vanilla Fallout 4, or maybe those random encounters will be quite a bit tougher. There's a lot of other mods like Endless Warfare doing this on a much broader scale, making the Commonwealth just outright chaos, but I like this one because 1, it's more natural, but 2, it gives you a lot more control over how exactly it happens. But then we have a simple one with Lucky Loot. This mod will make it so when you open a container in Fallout 4, specifically a locked container, now how difficult the lock was and your luck stat actually contribute to the loot you find within. So if you have extremely high luck, you'll find better loot, and if it was an extremely difficult lock, you'll find better loot. It's really simple, but also really intuitive. It's kind of how you would expect it to work in Fallout 4 to begin with, and it does give quite a bit more value to that luck stat, especially across an entire playthrough. For me, I've played Fallout 4 so many times now that I just like getting a quick start. I basically always use an alternate start mod, but I still have to kind of grind through many of those early quests to open the game up. Well, one mod that will actually remove what I think is the least fun part of those early quests is SKK Fast Start Minutemen. What this will allow you to do is make it so after you start the game, you'll have the option to bypass the initial Minutemen quests up to just starting the castle quest. There are a few different options here, so you could just have it automatically rescue Preston, but then stop there, or my desired way is automatically rescue Preston and also promote you to the general and start the castle quest, so you don't have to do all those intermediary rescue missions in between, which just get really redundant. I've cleared Corvega enough times and cleared the Museum of Freedom more than enough times. It's a really simple one, but also really lightweight and easy to use, and you could even install it on a new playthrough as long as you haven't done any of the quests. But then another really cool one is Better Locational Damage Robot Edition. This is an overhaul to combat with robots in Fallout 4. At its core, what it's going to do is make it so the only way you'll deal health damage to a robot is if you shoot its reactor, aka the torso of that robot. They still do have dismemberment, so you can shoot off their legs, their arms, their head, and this will still have an impact, such as them not being able to use their weapons or come at you. But if you want to finish them off completely, you have to shoot their core. And this will also bring some buffs to many of the robots in general, but it makes robot combat this pretty interesting thing now where sometimes it's just a lot easier to focus fire something like their legs or their arms instead of just trying to take them down as quickly as possible. And overall, I like it because it makes those robot encounters a little bit more interesting, a more novel experience, especially for those of us that have had those experiences thousands of times now. But in a very similar vein, and actually from the same mod author, we also do have Automatron randomized bots. This is a great one. What it's going to do is make it so the robots that spawn throughout the Automatron DLC and just in the Commonwealth overall, after you actually start that DLC, will now have more different configurations, using more of those pieces that can be found at the robot crafting workbench, but actually populating the leveled list with them. If you're playing Automatron or just playing the game in general after that DLC, this is a must download. It even further makes those robot interactions far more interesting and just a lot more custom. You'll start to see stuff you didn't even realize was a feature because you never use it and the enemies were never using it either. Although one that's actually going to be really great for survival mode players is Highway Runner. It's a very simple one. What it'll do is actually connect the interstates in Fallout 4, which by default are in varying degrees of disarray, and at several points you actually can't run over them. This will just add in pieces that will connect one section to the next. I know though at first glance that might just seem relatively simple, and I guess it is. Especially on survival mode, this makes highways a really good means of travel. Although there'll still be enemies on them, you could almost always see them coming up, and it's just a lot nicer to run across a highway than the uneven terrain you find on the ground. Not quite an alternate fast travel mod, but a good middle ground, and I think just a cool mod to have overall. I recall even when I was younger and playing Fallout 3 for the first time, one of the things that stood out to me is just being really frustrating was how lackluster the armories were. All the defenses were there, whether it be automated turrets, robots, or hard to get through doors. Once you actually got inside, it was like 2 guns and a box of ammo. It was definitely not a fully fledged armory. Well, National Guard Armory and more, Revamp, is going to fix this for several of the armories throughout Fallout 4's Commonwealth. Now, when you enter, it'll look like a real armory, and it's just awesome. I really love this mod. I think it's a really cool addition. Right now, it affects 3 of the armories throughout Fallout 4. There are plans to expand this in the future. It also adds in its own custom dungeon, but it's so refreshing now to break into an armory, get through all those defenses, and actually have quite a bit waiting for you on the other side, even if a lot of it is just redundant items that you probably won't even end up taking. But then last but not least, we do have Sector 5 Rise and Fall. This is actually the most popular mod on this list, having over 10,000 unique downloads, but I don't think it's nearly as popular as it should be. Without spoiling too much, this is a fully voiced DLC-sized questline, adding in several new items, armors, NPCs, and a ton of new locations. It's actually a 5-act story that has been progressively released over the past couple of years, and even if you played some of the parts, now's obviously the time to play it through as you get a solid ending. I don't want to spoil too much, just showing you some of the gameplay of those early quests, but it's a really cool one, and if you have some extra time or just have Fallout 4 on your computer, this is a good way to break into a new character or even just play on an existing one. But either way, for me, that's 10 underrated mods for Fallout 4. Some mods that I just think deserved a little bit more attention, that were very special and very cool in game, but got overlooked for one reason or another. One of the big things that does happen is sometimes when several really cool mods get released at the same time, some of the cool mods kind of get pushed to number 6, 7, or 8 and don't end up on the home screen of Nexus or the trending page on Bethesda.net, and as such, some great content can be easily overlooked just because of the abundance of great content. So hopefully this video is helpful in some of you adding some new additions to your load order. Either way, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, but with that, I hope to see you all next time. Later.